So I've been playing Silent Hill 3.
Okay, so I actually reviewed this game before about a year ago. It was one of the first So I've Been Playings what I did, and because of that, it wasn't very good. Overall, I just felt like the video didn't do the game any justice. And the only one allowed not to do Silent Hill any justice is Konami itself. Also, it wasn't so much a review as it was me just talking about the game for a bit. Cause at the time, I wanted So I've Been Playing to be a scripted first impression show instead of it being a proper review show. You know, short bite-sized little videos that I could do easily on a weekly basis. But being the cunthole that I am, I kept raising the bar like an idiot. And now, here we are. Anyway, seeing as how the series has been treated these days, I really wanted to talk about it again. Initially, I was gonna review Silent Hill 4, but I didn't want the sham that is the original review to taint my channel any longer. And it's also my favorite entry into the series. I'm sure the second one is probably the better game objectively, but I also just don't care. I like this one, man. So fucking let's review the game already. Now, in terms of story, you'd think that Silent Hill 2 would continue where Silent Hill 1 left off, but it doesn't. 2 is its own self-contained story. Silent Hill 3, however, picks up years after the events of Silent Hill 1, and it stars Heather Mason, the adopted daughter of Harry Mason, the protagonist of the first game. Like, you know that baby called Alessa that Harry finds near the end? Of course, that Silent Hill baby's gotta be haunted or some shit, and because of that, Harry was attacked by Silent Hill people a few years after. So he dyed her hair, changed her name to Heather, and then they lived happily ever after. As the years went by, shit seemed to be fine, Heather was doing alright, and Harry had set up his own strip club emporium. But as the old saying goes, you can take a girl out of Silent Hill, but you can't take the Silent Hill out of the girl. Or something like that. And thus, creepy shit starts showing up, a bunch of cultist bullshit happens, and that's where our adventure begins. Now, one could argue if continuing the plot of the original Silent Hill was really such a good idea. And I agree that it is kinda stupid in some ways. I mean, I kinda like the idea of Silent Hill being a cult, but the whole reflection of yourself thing Silent Hill 2 went for is arguably the better scenario. And even if it wasn't, it's hard to deny that the plot of this game can seem a wee bit convoluted in comparison because of all the cultist lore that was already quite weird in and of itself, and, well, it certainly didn't get any better by expanding upon it. Thing is that you have all of these cool looking areas and the awesome but dreary music, only for the characters to be talking about the seal of Metatron, which, I don't know, it just always sounded a little bit dumb to me. Despite that, however, I'd say that the characters do more than enough to make up for all of it. Like the coming to terms with oneself adventure that Heather goes through is so much more interesting than the silly little cult it centers around. Not to mention that everyone in this game is just so incredibly off-putting and very hard to trust because of it. I mean, the first two Silent Hill games had kinda shifty voice acting that ended up adding to the experience because of the uncanny vibe it brought, but this game just takes it to a whole new level. Thing is that the voice acting in this isn't actually all that bad, well, except for Douglas, as there are some moments where shit really needs to get good and, well, it actually gets good. But all the other dialogue is just so incredibly off either because or despite the fact that the voice acting isn't all that bad when compared to the previous games. Also, all of the cultist stuff is mostly treated as backstory, and it doesn't really play into most of the game except for the events taking place near the end. Although, in terms of pacing, and especially in the beginning, it can feel a little bit like the story is just leaving out relevant information. Like, why the fuck is this thing in the shopping mall all of a sudden? Why does it seem like Silent Hill is coming here instead of us going to it? And what the fuck are you even talking about? It all just felt very weird to me the first time playing through the game. But now, playing through the game a second time, it actually seemed a lot more interesting to me than it did at first. Thing is that first you still hear people echoing throughout the mall, even though you don't see any. Shortly after that, monsters start happening, the people noises disappear, and more ominous sounds start playing. And then, as you take the elevator, the mall will quickly transform into whatever the fuck this is supposed to be. It's quite a cool little descent into madness, and I'm interested to know if there's anything more behind it than just building up tension. And even after all that, shit actually does get established. Though I would say that having a very basic understanding of Silent Hill's plot and the overarching lore might still be a good idea. I mean, knowing what I know now, everything made sense. But when I played through the game for the first time, I was pretty fucking confused here and there because I didn't know what everyone was talking about. Like that little bit of backstory I just gave about Heather being Harry's adopted daughter doesn't really get explained by the game itself until much later on, and even then I'd still say that it's easy to miss it. But in a way, I'd also argue that the complicated backstory and the sometimes cryptic storytelling is just part of the fun of playing a Silent Hill game. And you want to know what's also part of the fun of playing a Silent Hill game? Actually playing the fucking Silent Hill game, instead of going on about the story like a fucking cunt. If you watched my Resevelations review, you might remember what I said about the older Resident Evil games functioning like one big puzzle. I mean, those games had a Metroidvania style of exploration, and because of that, the entire area functioned as one big puzzle. Everything you did triggered some kind of mechanism somewhere else, and every little thing mattered in its own unique way. From the items you decide to either pick up or leave behind, to the zombies you choose to kill. Nothing ever de- or respawns, and everything is constant. Silent Hill 3, however, is kinda split up into two halves. The first half consists out of Heather making her way home from the shopping mall, and the second half takes place in good old Silent Hill. Now, because of the first half being mostly about going from point A to B, it doesn't feature quite as much backtracking as it would do bumblefucking around in a single area. And, well, I actually love it quite a bit. To me, it almost feels like going on some sort of spooky adventure. As you explore the shopping mall, ride the subway, sludge through the sewers, and fuck around with mannequins in an office building. Though in some ways it kinda simplifies the puzzles a bit, as you don't stay in most areas for quite as long as you would do normally. But I honestly prefer it this way. Despite that though, it isn't really all that different from the previous Silent Hill games, as it's still a very traditional survival horror game. In fact, most of the gameplay, right down to the menus and controls, seems to be completely unaltered since Silent Hill 2. So, you explore the areas while doing some puzzles that are actually quite tough, and occasionally you'll fight some monsters. It has tank controls so you don't fidget around every time the camera angle changes, and it has a map that slowly changes as details are added, like which doors are locked and which aren't. The only thing that's really different here compared to Silent Hill 2 is the insane arsenal of weapons you'll have by the end of the game. Thing is that Silent Hill 2 had a bigger focus on melee weapons that seemed at least somewhat realistic given the situation you were in. So things like an iron pipe or a wooden plank, and the only firearms you could get your grubby little hands on were a pistol, a rifle, and a shotgun. Silent Hill 3, on the other hand, just doesn't give a fuck, as you end up getting a submachine gun, a maul, and a fucking katana. And while I do like it a lot, I will admit that it does seem maybe a little bit unrealistic. Despite that though, the combat is still purposefully awkward, so you're still encouraged to run rather than fight, and in most cases, that's exactly what I ended up doing. I mean, just as in Resident Evil, you could potentially end up fucking yourself over in the end if you run around guns blazing. Although, Silent Hill does seem a bit more forgiving in the survival department, as the focus is definitely on atmosphere and puzzles. The puzzles in question are actually pretty fucking hard. I mean, over the last couple of months, I've really felt like I've been repeating myself quite a bit. The puzzles are fairly self-explanatory. If you're looking for Silent Hill-like mindfuckery like the puzzle with the nooses, then you won't find it here. Sometimes a puzzle is literally opening a cabinet. Yeah, the puzzles in question aren't all that hard. Direct penis. The puzzles in this game are incredibly straightforward. This game, however, will certainly make you scratch your head or look up a walkthrough depending on how much patience you have. I'm kinda in the middle. I tend to give it my all, but if I really can't figure it out after about 20 minutes, I will Google that shit. Though I do find it worth noting that whenever I was stuck at a puzzle, it usually had more to do with me just not knowing where a certain item was rather than not knowing how the puzzle worked. Thing is that the puzzles are actually based around logic, as they don't contain adventure game levels of bullshit. It's just that with things being as dark as they are, it can be quite easy to miss certain items. Now, in my Silent Hill 2 review, I stated that I both hated and loved the realistic maps. And, well, I still feel kinda ambivalent about it. I mean, I like that it gives you the idea that the areas you explore are bigger than they are. And perhaps more importantly, that it makes you feel like you're actually exploring them. But at the same time, a lot of that exploration will be spent switching back and forth between the map screen, which does get a wee bit annoying here and there. So while I do feel that it's kind of a cool idea, I'd also say that it's fairly awkward in its execution. That isn't to say that I have a better idea though, well, other than the default upper left corner of the screen map, which would pretty much ruin the entire Silent Hill experience by taking away the "holy shit, where the fuck am I going, what is that noise" vibes. And holy shit, do I love the "holy shit, where the fuck am I going, what is that noise" vibes. I mean, from an audio-visual standpoint, this series shits on pretty much every other survival horror franchise ever. And I know I gushed over how pretty I think the music is many times before, so I'll refrain from doing that again, especially because I think the second game does it better anyway. But in terms of sheer horror, I'd say that this game has the upper hand, as there isn't anything quite like stepping into a big dark room for the first time only to be welcomed by... Even now, on my second playthrough, I'm still not sure what exactly is making that noise, apart from that it has spazzy arms and what I think are saw blades. But despite that, it's still one of the scariest things I've encountered in a game. Which is why the game's sound designer, Akira Yamaoka, is one of my personal heroes. And I know his work on games like Killer is Dead wasn't quite as amazing, but the fact that he made the first 4 Silent Hill games as consistently scary and beautiful as he has is quite something. I mean, not to discredit any of the other Team Silent members, But all of the random squishy metallic-y noises that are meant to freak you the fuck out and inspired countless of other games to do the same are all his idea. Things like stepping out into a room and hearing stomping sounds as if there are people walking around upstairs, or mucking about in an abandoned construction site all alone and you suddenly hear the exact same thing. Or even just the very few actual jump scares that, because of the game being so incredibly tense, do actually get to me. And there are tons of other things like that, despite them just being audio, add quite a lot to the game in terms of atmosphere. And of course, all of the fucked up visuals add to that as well, not to mention the excellent lighting that quite literally shines because of the incredibly detailed areas. The only real complaint I have is that there are no alternating footstep sounds. So walking through a long echoey hallway without any music can be a bit monotonous at times. Oh god, my voice. I find this especially strange as the second game actually does a much better job at doing this. So why they didn't bother to put in the extra effort here is just beyond me. Despite that though, I really do like this game quite a whole fucking lot, if that wasn't obvious enough at this point. And I know that the game isn't perfect or anything, and you won't see me going around saying dumb shit like,
"Oh, you have to play this game. Really, it's legendary. Woo woo woo."
like some kind of asshole. I mean, it is a survival horror game, so it's kinda clunky on purpose, and some people just won't be into that. But I am, so fuck you, Konami.